47 applicants sat in the pristine dining room of Corinthian, the city's newest fine dining establishment. Black uniforms, pressed whites, résumés thick as novels. Then Marcus Reid walked through the service entrance holding his daughter's hand. She clutched a stuffed whisk she called whisker. The laughter started immediately. Someone muttered it looked like bring your kid to work day. Marcus didn't turn around. He crouched down, straightened Emma's collar once, and walked to the interview station. 6 hours later, when the Michelin inspector arrived unannounced and the new head chef collapsed under pressure, Marcus would be the only person in that kitchen who knew how to save them. The woman who had dismissed him at the door would learn exactly what she'd almost thrown away. Marcus Reid was 34 years old. He woke at 4:47 every morning, made breakfast for Emma, checked the handwritten schedule on the refrigerator, and walked her to Grace Hartman's house 3 blocks away. Grace was 61, had worked as a pastry chef for 40 years, and had quietly filled a space in Emma's life that neither of them named aloud. Then Marcus went to work at Marco's Bistro, a neighborhood place where he worked the line for $18 an hour and asked no one for anything. His wife Sarah had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. Emma had been 4. The medical bills had taken everything except the apartment and the discipline Marcus had learned in kitchens that did not forgive mistakes. He did not talk about Sarah except when Emma asked, and when she asked, he answered fully. Emma was 7, missing a front tooth, and deeply attached to Whisker, a small stuffed whisk Sarah had bought her the day before the accident because Emma had wanted to cook like Daddy. The toy had lost most of its wire details and been repaired twice. Emma did not care. Anton Reeves was the only person at Marco's who knew what Marcus had been before. He was 58, had worked sous chef at Le Bernardin for 12 years, and had the useful quality of knowing when to speak and when to simply stand beside someone in silence. On Friday evenings, he sometimes brought coffee, and they would prep in quiet companionship. He had watched Marcus for 3 months before saying anything. Then, one night, while breaking down the station, he'd said quietly, "I worked a charity event in 2015. You ran the kitchen, 16 stations, 400 guests. Not a single plate went out late." Marcus had looked at him for a long moment. Anton had simply nodded and gone back to work. Victoria Chen had purchased Corinthian 6 months earlier. She was 29, Oxford-educated, with a trust fund and a vision. She wanted a Michelin star within 2 years. She had hired James Whitmore, a celebrity chef with television credentials and a following, to run the kitchen. She had invested $2.3 million in renovations. Everything was scheduled, calculated, and timed for perfection. What she did not have was experience with what happened when the schedule broke. The invitation had come through the Culinary job board. Head chef interviews, Corinthian. Invitation only. Marcus had not applied. Someone had submitted his name. He suspected Anton, though Anton denied it with the careful innocence of a man protecting a truth. He arrived at 2 p.m. wearing his cleanest chef's whites and holding Emma's hand because the sitter had canceled and Grace was at a doctor's appointment. He had called ahead. The hostess had said children were not typically present at professional interviews, but the decision would be Victoria's. Victoria stood near the host stand when they entered. She wore a black suit, her hair pulled back, and the expression of someone who had already made several decisions that afternoon and was impatient to make more. She looked at Marcus. She looked at Emma. She looked at Whisker. "This is a professional interview," she said, not unkindly, but with the finality of someone who believed clarity was a courtesy. "We can reschedule when you have appropriate childcare." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he crouched to Emma's level. "Can you sit by the window with your drawing pad?" Emma nodded. She was used to this. She walked to the far booth, set Whisker beside her, and opened her backpack. Marcus turned back to Victoria. "I'm here now. I'd like to interview." She studied him for 3 seconds, then gestured toward the dining room. The interview was conducted by Victoria and James Whitmore. James was 42, tall, with the kind of confidence that came from being recognized in airports. He looked at Marcus's single-page resume and did not hide his reaction. "Marco's Bistro," James said. "Neighborhood Italian." "Yes," Marcus said. "No formal training listed, no apprenticeships, no stages." "Correct." James leaned back. "What makes you think you're qualified for Corinthian?" Marcus looked at him directly. I can run a Michelin kitchen under pressure. That's what you need. Victoria's expression shifted slightly. It was the first thing Marcus had said that did not sound rehearsed or desperate. Demonstrate, she said. The practical exam was a single dish, 30 minutes, ingredients provided. James would evaluate technique. Marcus was given a station at the end of the line. He did not ask for clarification. He looked at the ingredients: duck breast, cherry gastrique components, microgreens, edible flowers, and began. He did not move quickly. He moved with the economy of someone who had done this enough times that efficiency had replaced hurry. The duck was scored in a diamond pattern, the fat rendered slowly, the skin crisping at a temperature he gauged by sound rather than thermometer. The gastrique reduced to a glaze that caught light. The plating was minimal, architectural, the kind of composition that looked effortless because every element had been placed with absolute intention. He finished in 26 minutes. He set the plate on the pass and stepped back. James looked at it for a long time. He did not taste it immediately. He studied the sear, the glaze viscosity, the angle of the microgreens. Then he tasted. His face did not change, but something in his posture did. "Where did you train?" James asked. "I didn't," Marcus said. "That's not possible." Marcus said nothing. Victoria tasted the dish. She set down the fork slowly. "Who taught you to plate like this?" "A chef named Raymond Cartier," Marcus said. 11 years ago. The room went very still. Raymond Cartier had held 3 Michelin stars for 15 years before retiring. He had trained more Michelin chefs than any other single mentor in North America. He had also been famously selective, taking only 2 or 3 apprentices per decade. Marcus had been 22 when Raymond had found him working a farmer's market pop-up, cooking with equipment most chefs would have considered beneath them. Raymond had tasted one dish, asked 3 questions, and offered Marcus a position that afternoon. The training had been 4 years of 18-hour days, techniques repeated until muscle memory replaced thought, and standards so uncompromising that Marcus had once redone a sauce 11 times before Raymond had given a single nod of approval. "Raymond doesn't teach anymore," Victoria said. "He doesn't," Marcus agreed. Anton appeared in the kitchen doorway. He had not been invited to the interview. He leaned against the frame and said quietly, "Raymond taught Marcus for 4 years. Marcus went on to consult for 8 Michelin kitchens in this city. He wrote the training protocols half of them still use. Then his wife died and he disappeared." James turned to Marcus. "Why didn't you put that on your resume?" "Because it's not who I am now," Marcus said. Victoria hired James Whitmore. She made the announcement that evening. Marcus received a polite rejection email thanking him for his time. He read it at the kitchen table while Emma practiced writing her name in careful block letters. He did not feel surprised. He felt tired. 3 weeks later, Corinthian opened. The reservations were full for 6 months. The press coverage was extensive. James Whitmore gave interviews about his vision, his philosophy, his commitment to excellence. On opening night, a Michelin inspector arrived unannounced at 7:45 p.m. The kitchen had been running for 2 hours. The rhythm was tight, professional. Then the inspector ordered the tasting menu. 12 courses. Each one a test. By the 4th course, James was sweating. By the 7th, his hands were shaking. The inspector sent back the 8th course. The quail was overcooked by 30 seconds. In a Michelin kitchen, 30 seconds was the difference between a star and a failure. James stepped off the line. He walked into the office, sat down, and did not come back out. Victoria found him there at 9:17 p.m. The dining room was full. The inspector was on course 9. The kitchen had no head chef. She called the only number she could think of. Marcus was reading to Emma when the phone rang. He looked at the screen, saw Victoria's name, and almost didn't answer. Then he did. "I need you here," she said. No preamble. James walked out. "The Michelin inspector is in the dining room. I'm 20 minutes from disaster." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What are you offering?" "Whatever you want." "That's not what I asked." She paused. "What do you want?" "A position for Anton Reeves as sous. A policy that no chef works more than 12 hours without a break. And my daughter's name on a plaque in the kitchen, not for recognition. So she knows her father works somewhere that remembers what matters." "Done," Victoria said. Marcus called Grace. She answered on the first ring. 23 minutes later, Marcus walked into Corinthian's kitchen. The line was in controlled chaos. 3 courses behind, 2 stations running cold, the pastry chef near tears. He did not announce himself. He tied on an apron, stepped to the pass, and said clearly, "Course 9, halibut. Who's on fish?" The room shifted. Every chef on the line turned. They knew the voice, even if they didn't recognize the face. It was the voice of someone who had run kitchens like this when most of them were still in culinary school. For the next 90 minutes, Marcus ran the kitchen the way a conductor runs an orchestra. He did not yell. He did not rush. He redistributed stations, adjusted timing, rebuilt the rhythm until the line moved like a single organism. Course 9 went out perfect. So did 10, 11, 12. The inspector finished at 11:34 p.m. She left no comment, only her card. In Michelin evaluation, silence was provisional approval. When the dining room cleared, Victoria stood in the kitchen doorway. The staff was cleaning in the particular exhausted silence that follows a crisis, barely survived. "I'm sorry," she said, to Marcus, in front of everyone. "I looked at you that day and saw what I expected to see. I didn't see what was there." Marcus was wiping down his station. He did not stop. "You hired the résumé instead of the chef." "I did." He set down the cloth. "It's a common mistake. You won't make it again." That night, Victoria drove Marcus home. He had not asked for the ride. She had simply walked to her car and waited. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Then she said, "Why did you stop consulting?" Marcus looked out the window. "Sarah got sick 6 months before she died. The insurance covered most of it, not all of it. I needed steady money, not project work. So I took the line position at Marco's." He was quiet for a moment. "After she was gone, I stayed because Emma needed routine more than I needed a title." Victoria pulled up outside his building. She kept the car running. "I built Corinthian because I wanted to prove I could do something my family didn't hand me. I thought that meant doing it alone, doing it fast, doing it my way." She looked at him. "I almost destroyed it in 3 weeks." "You called the right person," Marcus said. "I called the person I should have hired in the first place." The first week, Marcus restructured everything. He rewrote the prep schedule, redesigned 3 stations for better flow, and spent an hour each morning training the line on the timing sequences that made the difference between good and precise. Victoria watched from the office window. She had expected arrogance, the kind of performance that came with rescued reputations. What she saw instead was a man teaching a young prep cook the correct angle to hold a knife with the same patience he probably used with his daughter. On Thursday evening, Emma came to the kitchen. Grace had brought her after closing at Marcus's quiet request. The dining room was empty, the lights half dimmed. Emma stood at the kitchen entrance, holding whisker and looking at the gleaming equipment with the careful attention of someone entering a place that mattered. Marcus crouched down. "Want to see where I work?" She nodded. He walked her through the stations, explaining each one in the simple language he'd learned from Sarah, who had always said the best teachers were the ones who remembered what it felt like not to know. Emma listened with the seriousness she brought to important things. When they reached the pass, Marcus lifted her up so she could see the whole kitchen from the chef's position. "This is where the food goes out?" she asked. "This is where everything comes together," he said. Victoria stood in the office doorway, watching. She did not interrupt. She had been taught that leadership meant decisive action, quick judgment, visible control. She was beginning to learn it also meant knowing when to be quiet and pay attention to what you'd been missing. 3 months later, Corinthian received its first Michelin star. The plaque went up in the kitchen the same week. It listed the head chef, the sous chef, and at the bottom, in smaller script, "For Emma Reid, who reminds us why we cook." Marcus still woke at 4:47. He still walked Emma to Grace's house, but now he walked to a kitchen where his name was on the door and his daughter's was on the wall. He did not become a different person. He became a more settled version of the person he had already been. Someone who knew that the things worth protecting rarely announced themselves, and that the distance between dismissed and indispensable was often just the willingness of one person to look twice.